Hello everybody, this is Danny from Deep South Homestead, back on porch time today. Yes, we're back in our studio room. I woke up this morning to logging going on right behind my house again. And it's a lot of noise in it, and you may still hear it with the mic. You may still pick up some of it in the background, and I hope it's not too distracting. But today, I wanted to think about what are we going to do and how will we survive when it happens. Now, I use the term when it happens because to this day, I don't really believe that any of us know what will actually transpire. Whether it will be a financial collapse, whether it will be some kind of man-made disaster, some kind of natural disaster, an act of God, whatever, EMP, whatever, grid down situation to actually cripple our country. Now, I really look for it to be even closer now than before because, and I know this is probably going to be something pretty controversial, but nevertheless, I'm going to go ahead and mention it. When New York passed the bill for late-term abortion, I really felt like that may have been the straw that broke the camel's back. Because up until that point, it's never been right in my eyes, but it never was to this extent. And now it's like it's really, really bad. And I don't know how God could allow a nation to continue to prosper doing that. He would have to go back, it looks to me like, and I mean, he's God, he can do anything, and I understand that. But it looks to me like he would have to go back and apologize to other instances in the Bible where he destroyed and caused other nations to go into captivity because of the offering of small children as sacrifices. Because in my eyes, it is still offering children for sacrifices, even though it's in a different form. It's for the form of pleasure or whatever, however you want to look at it, convenience or whatever the word might be. But what are we going to do when it happens? Wanda and I were talking about this a couple of days ago about our place here, how that we have really, the tractor has really been a blessing to us. We have a front end loader, we're able to break our fields, we're able to plow our ground, hook up equipment to plant stuff in order to have enough. Now this is the key, not to just raise some stuff, but to be sustainable is the word. What would we do if it happened and we did not have the luxury of using equipment? Now, can we still farm? With the right technology, yes. I mean, when I use the word technology, it's kind of primitive, but our forefathers lived hundreds of thousands of years, or many thousand, not hundreds of thousands, but many thousand years without modern technology. And they farmed and they grew stuff and they survived. But they had oxen and they had mules and donkeys and stuff like this that pulled plows and things. And we were just sitting here, a couple of days ago talking about this, and what would we do if it happened? Could we actually get our grounds ready? Because that's what we're in the process of doing right now, is getting our ground ready. We've planted some things, but the only way we was able to do it was through the luxury of equipment. Because the ground's been so wet, we was able to bring equipment in and fluff the ground even though it was wet and allow the water to evaporate out of it so that we could get it dry enough to get stuff in. But without that luxury, could we be sustainable here at Deep South Homestead? That's a question that she and I really began to kick around. Because if we had to get out and do it all by hand, somehow or other break up the ground, you know, and without an ox or without mules or the right equipment and plows for all that stuff, because today with the technology, my money has been invested in equipment. Now I do have tons of hand equipment, but I really don't have anything that will actually turn the soil. Contrary to what a lot of people believe, here where we live at, and I'm probably going to get a lot of flack because of this, but you know what, I really don't care. Because I live here, I know what I'm doing here. I've lived here for almost 30 years on this piece of property out here, and I know the land. I have tried just about every method of gardening here that is imaginable. I've done no-till, I've done container gardening, I've done raised bed gardening, I've done row crop gardening, I've done monolithic gardening, you know, you name it. I've hugelkultur gardening, I've done it all. And I've come to the conclusion, because of the type of soil that I have, because it's so sandy here, that the only way I am going to get anything to grow here is just like my forefathers did on this very same area right here. Every 1 to 2, let's say every 2 years, I believe it is, 2, maybe 3 sometimes if you really get by good, depending on the weather, you've got to break that subsoil in order for water to rise in this sandy soil here enough to, because it forms a pan underneath it. Even if you don't put a tractor on it and foot traffic only and whatever, it still forms that hard pan. And without a chisel plow of some sort, in order to break that pan where water can rise and go down in the ground, it is almost impossible to grow anything here of any quality. Because our topsoil is not the best in the world. Even though it's a sandy loam, I'm constantly adding organic matter to it. I mean, literally, like this week, we got our English pea garden ready. Now my bucket on my tractor's big. It's like almost 6 feet wide. It's just a huge bucket on the front of my tractor. I put 15 buckets full of compost in just my English pea garden, which is about 16 feet wide and about 60 feet long now. And I raised that soil up a lot, and when I ran in there with a disc and I disked it all in, it just looked like dirt again. I mean, it blended with that sandy loam so well till you almost couldn't tell it was even anything put in there. And we're talking about tons of goat manure, chicken manure, cow manure, all that just being dumped in there and turned in. But guys, if it happened, I don't know how I would successfully get this done. I do know that we could probably dump the stuff on the ground in the winter time and let it decompose. I could probably dump it all on there, and I mean, I'm trying to come up with scenarios in my head as to how we would make it here. I would have to fence the garden. We would have to come in and wheelbarrow it. Now, because there would be no equipment, be no other way to do it, we would have to wheelbarrow everything out of the barns up there and dump it in the gardens. And once we dumped it in, I would literally have to turn my pigs in there and let them just root and root and root and root, and then put the chickens in behind them and let them scratch and everything during the winter months, so that when spring comes, possibly with the hand tools I have from Hoss Tool, that we could get some gardening done. So we're looking for alternatives, because I don't have a mule. I don't have all the equipment, the single trees and the double trees and the big turn plows, and I don't have all this equipment that goes behind the mules, harnesses and, you know, all this kind of stuff to do this. And even if I did, it would take time to train a mule to do this, or a pair of oxen. I don't have an ox yoke or anything like that anymore. Guys, we need to stop and think about this, because it takes a lot of area to raise enough food to feed a family. Now, we're talking about me and Wanda. Me and Wanda can somewhere around 2,000 jars a year. Now, that gets us through a year with food, other than when we eat in season. Now, we do eat in season as much as possible, but we also can a lot of what is in season to have during the winter months. And even with that, we just get by. We have enough to eat, we have plenty to eat, but we can't go crazy with it and just gorge and waste. Whatever we fix, we've got to make sure that it literally, every bit of it gets utilized. And we have given this a lot of thought because we're not hobby farmers. We literally farm everything we eat just about. Some things take very little care. We're looking into more of forever stuff. When I say forever stuff, I mean I'm talking things like rosemary as an herb, blueberries, apples, peaches, pears, plums, these kind of trees. I'm looking into that kind of stuff, doing more permaculture. We have our raised beds and our container gardens. With the container gardening, we're more able to take the manure out of the barn and put it into the containers and to turn that soil and to get it more in a controllable environment to where we can grow some stuff. Now I think we're up to like 125 big black pots to plant in right now, and we're adding all the time, because if we have to water those, it's a lot easier for me to pump water from my hand pumped well into buckets and water pots than it is for me to try to water a garden that's large. And I know people's gonna say, well, you do the back to Eden. Back to Eden did not work here. I don't want to even hear it because I've tried it for years. It just did not work. Our climate is so warm down here. The insect issue is horrendous. We ended up with the worst nematodes we've ever had in our life doing them back to Eden. We raised a big garden full of worst insect problem I have ever had in my life, because they lived in all that mulch, and so we done away with that. Now, I'm not trying to say that wood chips is not a good thing, because if they're decomposed in a compost pile somewhere and brought to that garden and used as compost, once they've completely deteriorated, then that, my friend, is some fantastic organic mulch. Now that works good. If you can incorporate some animal manure in with that, and I know there's YouTube channels out there with la 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 and hoo hoo or whatever, that's saying this and doing that, and they're supposedly proving this and proving that, and that may be work fine where you're at, and if it is, that's what you need to do. I'm just telling you where I live, in my climate, this stuff doesn't work. So as a result, we have come up with row covers here. Now the row covers we're going to be trying this year. This is experimental for us. If it does what I think it will do, then hopefully we won't have as big of a weed problem, and this stuff supposedly will last. I mean, mine says it's got a 20-year life expectancy if I put some sort of mulch on top of it. So in that instance, I'm not sure how the mulch is going to work on top of that black row cover stuff yet. It's actually a solarizer, it's a soil warmer, it's a weed deterrent. It's all these things together. It helps to conserve moisture in the soil. So we're going to be trying it this year to see, because guys, as short as time is, whatever we can do to ensure the success of our future planting that is what we're going to be doing here at Deep South Homestead. Now, you know, where you live at, the question is, what will you do when it happens where you're at? Will you be able to come up with enough food to sustain your family? Because guys, let's just face it, the grand solar minimum that they're talking about, this year is proving in some areas to actually be happening, just like they predicted. I mean, they said in the mid part of the United States up into the Midwest, some of the East Coast, not all of the East Coast, but parts of the East Coast, they showed we'd go into a deep freeze and we would have some of the worst winter weather we've had. And I think they're coming to the grips with this as it's actually true, because I've noticed now, and this is a funny part, the winter storms are becoming so severe that they're actually naming them like they do hurricanes. And when I saw that, I was like, yeah, they're planning on this being something to go down in history, to have a way to say what storm it was that did what in this part of the country during this particular part of the solar minimum, or what, you know, whatever the damage it did, or what they have a name to go back to and stick it on. So I'm seeing it beginning to happen. I'm having lots of people contact us and say, oh my God, this is the worst winter we have ever had. And a lot of people are saying this is the wettest winter we've ever had. Some people say, you know what, it's normally cold here, but it's not cold this year. We've had even that. But this thing about the grand solar minimum happening, guys, keep in mind, it's not about it being a giant deep freeze all the time. It's about extreme weather. Extreme weather is just as bad as mild or no weather, because extreme weather means that you can go to literally freezing for days on end and not be able to have time to get a crop in early enough, because the ground will not warm up enough, and then by the time the ground warms up, it turns off so hot that you have an extreme heat issue, and then the plants just go from extreme freezing to extreme heat. That's what we experienced here last year at our place. And as a result, the nights would be cold, the days would be blistering hot, and plants cannot adjust to that. And what you end up with is a plant that just sits there. It doesn't really do anything. And then the sun's rays were so hot last year that literally we had to put pepper plants in shades just to be able to get them to produce. Now that is totally unheard of here, but it had to be done in order to make them produce. We had to move some of our other plants into shady areas where we only got like 3 hours and maybe 4 hours of sunshine on it a day, but the rest of the day was in a moderate shade or partial shade. And at that point, our plants, like, they just rejuvenated and they came back out and they began to produce. So we've learned that last year. So we're probably going to be implementing some more of that this year into our gardening. And many of y'all have mentioned to us some of the successes and some of the failures that you had on your gardens, and we got to noticing on some of our gardens also we had some of the same issues. And this is where the homesteading community, while we have internet, is a blessing, because we can all communicate back and forth with one another and be able to find solutions and remedies. That is that's our desire here at Deep South Homestead, is to try to work our way through these things and be able to put that information out there for y'all to, if you're having problems, to be able to find a way to cope with it maybe a little better, rather than struggling and struggling and then losing everything. Because this past year, many of you guys some of the YouTubers and then some of the, when I say YouTubers, I mean people who have YouTube channels, and then some of the subscribers, you know, sent us messages and said, you know what, we tried as hard as we could try, and we literally failed this year. We got a few things off our plants, but not enough to justify the time and effort that we put into it. And guys, look, don't feel like that's a bad thing, because here at Deep South, I've been saving one particular of things of seeds, my green bean seeds. I've had those seeds for over 20, I think it's 25, 26 years. They've always done perfect. This past year, we planted 3 times those same seeds and only got up a part of 1 row. I think we might have canned 10 or 12 jars off of that row, and that was it. And normally we pick those things by the 5-gallon buckets. But the weather would not cooperate. The soil was so cold that last year, even you could be blistering up in the sun outside and put your hand in that soil, and it was like you put your hand into a refrigerator. I did not understand it. I don't know what the deal was. I don't know if the nighttime temps were just too cool, and the daytime just really, it was blistering hot, but it wasn't the kind of solar heat that warmed the ground up. Don't know the answer to that one, but I know that in the future, gardening is going to be more of a challenge than it's ever been. So that's why we're excited about moving forward with new techniques, because we're planting by the moon. We do that. But let me say this, because of geoengineering, a lot of our moon phase stuff isn't working like it's supposed to. So we're still this year going to be planting by the moon, and we're going to be seeing if it's still holding true that planting dates by the moon actually still work like they used to in the older days when there was no geoengineering. Because when you do geoengineering, you alter everything, and it really messes with everything. And guys, and I may do a video on it, I'm not sure yet, about planting by the moon. I'm not really sure whether I want to do that just yet. I do believe in it. Don't get me wrong about that. It's just that I saw last year, even though we planted by the moon, we had failures, and lots of failures. So the geoengineering played a huge part in that. So guys, I guess today it's just been, I tried to be thought-provoking into what will you do when it happens, because like we said, none of us know what it will be. And it's hard to prepare for something when you don't know what you're preparing for. So what we've come up with is food storage, accessibility to water, the ability to reproduce that food, heirloom stuff, or if you can stock up enough seeds, it would last long enough to end up with, you can get some hybrids, as long as you've got enough seed to carry you through and enough heirloom seeds to actually get you beyond where the hybrids would be at, shall we say. We're working on actually both, building a seed bank. As y'all know, we've sold a lot of our seeds to y'all. We've got a lot of good response on that, and thank y'all, because that was a blessing to us, because we tried to bless y'all with stuff that we knew would work for us. And a lot of you have wrote us back and said, wow, these seeds were amazing. So thank y'all for that. We've tried to also get the Cherokee tan pumpkin out there, a pumpkin that was almost extinct here a while back. But hopefully we've been able to revive that and get it back. It is a very long life pumpkin. You look behind me right here, you see these? One on each side. Those were picked last August. They're still good. So This is the kind of stuff we're looking for. Stuff that doesn't have to be canned, takes no effort. You pick it, you make sure the stem is left real long on it, and it will last way into the next year. Last year we had them almost last a whole year. Now there's some products we're looking at that will last that long. I've had spaghetti squash here that lasted a whole year. The Cherokee tan pumpkins have lasted a whole year. So guys, this is what it's all about to us, sustainability. And that's what we're working on, trying to get this technology we're going to call it technology, or varieties, however you want to look at it, out there to you guys so that y'all can be a partaker in the things that we've figured out. Should an event happen, you can grow these things. You get like 50 of these things on a plant if they come up well and do well. And you can keep the good thing about these is vine borers get into them. They put a root out at every leaf, put roots out. And if vine borer gets one part of it, the rest of it will just keep on Cadillacing. So there's lots of benefits to certain things that we're growing here, because we're looking for forever plants. We're looking for things that have long shelf lives, things like that, guys. This is what we're trying to work toward, because we want to be able to survive when it happens. So guys, today was just to be thought-provoking. It wasn't really to lead you in any one direction or another direction, but to make you think about what will you do when it happens. Do you have the capability of raising enough food to supply you and your family with something to eat when it happens, whatever it is? So guys, thank y'all for joining me today on Porch Time, and thank you from the Deep South Homestead.